Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to this next video. My name is Amy, aka Funky Mama 0703, and I am so glad to see you back. Remember I was going to do a discussion about my personal argument with, or personal problem with depression. Was going to do that for this next video, and funny thing is I received a suggestion from Princier for this video here. You are not depressed. Just really seemed weird, seriously. But I liked the idea that kind of worked just as I was planning on doing that talk. So we will see, we'll watch this video and just let you know how shocking it is for me, because this really just got me that this was the video that they wanted to show. I have suffered from depression a majority of my life since I was probably, I don't know, started middle school years. So that would be what, 10, 11 years old. So I had a long time to live with this friend, and the way it affected me, the way it dealt with me for my entire life. It wasn't until probably my daughter was born that I actually started realizing that I've got a little control over it. And with the medication, well, it was when I had my daughter that I realized I really had an issue. Went in, got the help I needed. But this is a story that's going to go on a little bit later. But I'm going to show you this video. I'll be on the side over here and giving you my nods or shakes or whatever. And after this, I will give you a just kind of my story of my depression. Here we go.
You are not depressed. Stop saying that. Oh, snap. I got people mad already, ready to go off on me in the comments. How dare you question my depression? Hold on. Hold on. Don't be so quick to protect that which causes you suffering. Let's speak honestly. You may be experiencing a depression right now, but you are not depressed. And I'm going to show you why. And this shift, if remembered, will change your life forever. You ready? See, you are the sky. Depression, frustration, sadness, these are passing clouds. They come, they go. Some are black, some are white. Sometimes they pepper the sky, and sometimes they fill the sky. But they always come and go. Because they, even though they seem like it, are not the sky. If they were, then when they went, the sky would go too. And the sky is always there. So likewise, if frustration, depression, and sadness were you, then when they went, you would go. But that's not what happens, is it? But no, you are always here. You are that which these things appear in front of. You are the witness, the perceiver of depression. And that which perceives depression is not depressed. See, imagine this remote control is depression. So you got you, and then you got depression. Depression comes, it goes, it comes, it stays for a while, it goes. But you are always here. Big problems come when you start to identify as depression. Never identify with that which comes and goes. Now pause the video right now and take some time with this. This is life-changing. There's an old saying, before enlightenment, I was depressed. After enlightenment, still depressed. But it's totally different now. I no longer identify with the depression. I realize that it wasn't me. I observe it, allow it to come and go without resisting it. This is freedom. This is truth. You are greater than anything that comes and goes. Peace.
Okay, so my depression story is very similar to probably a lot of yours. Like I said, I started feeling the depression when I was probably about, 10 years old. I had lived in a small town. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody's business. You know how it is in a small town. And we were outsiders, basically. It was a small town, so everybody who partied together. Everybody who had lived in that town for a long period of time, they all had connections and friendships. And my parents moved in about 3 years before I was born, just after they got married. And then they didn't go out to party a lot with everybody else. They worked hard. The town was basically for them to live in and not to hang around in. They didn't do a lot outside of the house. And they worked hard. I mean, my parents were hardworking people. They really earned their money. It was a lot of work for them, but they did a great job, and they raised us pretty good. Unfortunately, they never knew how I was feeling, and didn't have a lot of friends growing up, and I felt kind of secluded, kind of not like nobody really cared. One of the biggest events I remember was third grade. My parents held me back. It was decided to hold me back. It wasn't my parents' choice, but it was the school and the parents decided to hold me back in third grade. That was before the No Child Left Behind stuff. And did my second year in third grade, but when the school year started and I was at Sunday school, I remember we were getting together for our classes for that year for school. And I remember going in with all the other kids that I had gone into for the first couple of years of catechism Sunday school. And I remember the kids throwing kind of I don't know, in my mind it was a lot meaner than what it may have been. But they were, you can't be in here, you're not in our grade anymore. And it just really stuck that harder, the being held back, and really hurt my heart, basically. I felt terrible about myself and about that. And then was put into the grade below me because I had already completed that grade in Sunday school. But they put me in the lower grade, and I never felt like I fit in. So went through a lot of things of just my entire life basically feeling, well, especially at school, feeling secluded. Now keep in mind, these kids in high school, kids in school, they're completely different than they are now as adults. I absolutely love the people that I went to school with, who I talk to when I'm at work, who I deal with on Facebook. They're a great bunch of people now. But as kids, they were really jerks in my mind, to me. But that was just the way I saw it, because I never really felt like I worked or that I bonded with them or really got in with them. So went through, made a couple what I considered were good friends. One friend that I had right all the way through middle school into high school, and that broke up when I made one strange comment, and it never did come back. Had two really good girlfriends that I liked. One lived just a block over from where I was, but we never did anything outside of school. And another one who lived on the outskirts of town, far out. So I never got to spend time out with her outside of school either. When we did plan things, she and I would go like to a movie or a couple things like that together, but it really wasn't a lot of time spent together. So, my fun time was at school with my friends. And it was kind of a love-hate relationship with school time. I got into school and I was even more secluded than at least I felt more secluded than maybe I was, but I felt extremely secluded. Never got invited to join things, never got invited to go to groups, hang out. Nobody made a point of being super friendly to me. But then, like I said, these are high school kids who have their cliques. Life changes when you grow up, seriously. Depending on how old you are right now and where you are in life, you'll realize that kids from high school, when they get older, they're really not as bad as they present themselves in school, or at least you perceive them in school. And it was a shocker for me, for sure. But it was a rough time in high school. I was just not really super happy. I did have a friend who lived nearby, and during our school year, it was probably junior year, she had we were having, well, they were building onto our school to put the middle school right next to it. So we were having half day school. We had half day schools or school days where we were like from 6 o'clock to noon 30, 12:30 ish. And then from 1 o'clock on to like 4, they had school. So it was really, really reduced school days, but quick, had to get through. And they wanted, of course, we got our building built, but whatever. Senior or junior year, I remember I'd gone over to a friend's house and she was going to cut my hair for me. And she cut it. It was really bad. Sorry, Lisa. It was really bad. Half-inch pieces, 3-inch pieces. I mean, it was absolutely terrible. And she had said this is exactly how her mom liked to have it cut. And with me already having low self-esteem and feeling bad about myself, when I got home and saw it, I was rocked by depression. Silly reason, it really is, a haircut. But if it wasn't for the fact that I didn't want to leave a mess behind for my mother to clean up, I wouldn't be here right now. I was at that point in my life that I wanted to end it. I had looked all over for something to kill myself with. There was nothing. Didn't know at that time that if you wanted to, you could really find a way to. But I had my father had guns in the house. And of course, there was always kitchen knives. But because those would leave a mess for my mom to clean up, and I didn't think it was fair for me to do that, to make her deal with that suffering. And there was nobody else at home. I was completely alone, so I could have done it. I was super depressed and called suicide hotline. Found out years later that they actually had a police officer in my hometown on call just in case something happened, and they had to rush to get over to my house. Called suicide prevention, sat and talked to them for a little bit. And when my mom and dad came home from work, I presented the problem with the hair, and my mom called one of the local beauticians and had told him it was an emergency. And she had said, you can't, I'll pay it when I get back. It was a good, I mean, they were nice. They let me go in and get it done. The funny thing was, it was the next day was going to be a school day. It was like Friday, whatever. And I was going to wear a bandana in to cover my hair. And I was totally all for going to school. At that time, I was feeling, I felt nobody's already paying attention to me. So what's a bandana across my head going to do? I don't know if we even had bandanas in my house at that time. So maybe that would have been a wrong idea. But I did, was planning on going to school. And as I was walking to school, my parents were leaving for work, and they pulled over and they said, no, go home. School's canceled. Actually, we had ice issues, and the roads were super slick. And because it's a small town, a lot of our students are from out of town. They're school or country folk. So they weren't able to make it in. The buses weren't out there. So they had said, well, then we're just canceling school. So I was a couple blocks from home, and my mom and dad stopped and said, go home. You don't go to school. And received a phone call from my mom saying, yeah, I made an appointment for you at this beautician. Get there and she'll do your hair and I'll pay when I come back. Well, I got in there. The woman had looked at the head and said, I never seen such a bad job. I'll take care of it. Got my first perm, which was like a big thing in the 80s, if any of you knew. The funny thing is, going back to school the next day, and the girl was like, see, I told you it was going to look good. I was like, no. But whatever. I know that it wasn't done to be mean. It was her just messing up, and that's fine because we're kids. We mess up. I'd already had the depression, and it was already really a bad thing for me. I was feeling crappy about myself. Years had gone by. I had anxiety, so making work or going to work was hard. I would freak out. Every day I went to work was going to be the day that I lost my job. It was the day that they were going to fire me. So I found ways of not going to work. I would call in sick several times. I would just not call in because it's like after 3 or 4 times calling in, it's like, okay, you know what? It's not going to do me any good. I just might as well just let the job go. I think I went through probably 6 or 7 jobs in that route. Keeping a job for less than a year. I had one job that I had for 8 years that I absolutely loved, but I had to quit it because I was going back to school and going back to college, and had needed more time to study, and this job wasn't going to get it. And I was manager at this station at an airport, and for security, and it wasn't going to do me any good. I mean, they were cutting my hours anyways. I was doing more outside of the business, outside of hours, that just to get things done, because I couldn't get it done all at work. And they were telling me any extra hours I did, I was going to be getting paid regular, regular security pay and not my supervisor pay. So I thought, I'm not doing it then, I'm done. So that one I had about 8 hours and loved it. But because of circumstances being what they were, I couldn't stay. So I had a rocky, I think depression played a part in that as well, but I know my anxiety played a huge part of that. Wasn't until I had my daughter and I thought about, I remember driving to my folks' house from our apartment one day and saw a tree, and my first thought was, I don't think anybody would care if we ran ourselves into that tree. And that was a moment that I thought, this is crazy. I got to get help. There's got to be something. Maybe, I mean, it might just be me. I'm the only one dealing with this, but I've got to get help. Went to see my doctor and told him how I felt. And he had decided, because I had told him it's been more than just since the baby came. We decided it was not postpartum depression, that it was a long-term depression. I only had my daughter 50% or 50% of the time. She went over to her father's half the time as well. So I got breaks from her, but it was those breaks from her that made me go inside my head and think about how sad I was, how much I missed her, how much pain I was in, how lonely I was. I didn't enjoy being alone, and I cried a lot. I remember crying. I remember one year she was 3 years old, and he and I were struggling, there we go, back and forth about just, I was a terrible parent in his eyes. I was mean. I didn't do what I needed to do for her. I was the worst parent around, and I was never going to see her again because he was going to take her. Well, we were having issues. We had gone through mediation, and I had told him, we had set up a plan, but I had told, they had asked about our holiday schedules, and I had said, stupidly, I said, well, I think we've got those figured out. That won't be a problem. Ordinarily, he would have her Christmas Eve. I would pick her up Christmas Day, have her Christmas Day, take her to my parents, go home, and then we would have our Christmas. And then if it was my week, if it happened that fell on an exchange day or anywhere near an exchange day, I would keep her. If not, I would take her back to him, and he would have her till it was his time to exchange. I remember she was 3 years old, and because I had said that, all of a sudden I had dropped her off one time. It was like the 22nd, 23rd, and he had said, well, we decided, him and his girlfriend have decided, we're not going to give her to you for Christmas. It's our time, so we're going to keep her. And I freaked for a second, and I refused to leave the apartment. I was there crying. I know I didn't do my daughter any good, but I wanted to make sure she was okay, because she was crying too, because she saw mommy crying, and mommy and daddy were being really loud, and we yelled at each other, and that scared her. I wasn't going to leave until I knew she was okay. And I wasn't okay. He called the police, and the police came, and we explained the situation to him, and even the police officers were begging him to just let the visitation go like it was supposed to, like we had already decided between the two of us, and he wouldn't do it. I could hear him yelling in the kitchen with the female officer, and I was standing by the front door with the male officer, and there was no way he was going to let me have my daughter on time that we had initially said was okay. So I was devastated and crying, and the officer walked me out, and he had said he was sorry. You know, they were all very, very, I mean, because of his attitude and because of how I acted, they were more on my side than on his. I mean, I left without fighting when the officer came. I had no issue. I wasn't going to leave, or I wasn't going to cause any problems, but I just wanted it known that this happened. The police officers, like I said, begged him to let me have her for Christmas, but he had said no, and they couldn't do anything about it because of the paperwork. So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Went home and cried forever. Curled up in a ball and cried. And my medication had run out, and so I was going to get my medication again. So we got back on meds. Depression was kind of under control, but when I went to therapy, the therapist had said that it was probably situational. So my depression got much, much worse. Really tanked when I had to deal with him, especially in situations like that. So there wasn't a lot we could do medication-wise because the meds were working on a regular basis. It didn't work for the tanking, but that's where my therapist was supposed to come in, and he did a great job. Mike was excellent. He helped me realize that I wasn't messed up and that I could work my way through things. Had suffered, I mean, you suffer from depression forever. I mean, it's not something that you can easily get rid of. It's not something that you can put yourself on meds and totally be gone with, and it will always be there. I always find myself falling into a little bit of a funk every now and then. It's all how you deal with it, just like the video said. It's all how you deal with it and let it take over you. You got to remember, it's a cloud in the sky. It disappears if it passes, and you just have to react to it and then move on, and you have to be strong. And I know after years of being strong, it sometimes makes it very hard. So I'm at the point where my depression is still there. I still feel it every now and then. I'm not on MedZent for it anymore, but I also realize that I do have some control over it. It's a struggle all the time, every day. It doesn't come easy, and I do fight with it. Sometimes I have to do the meditation that Prince EA has taught us. I was doing that before, and that was just kind of helping me settle my mind and my thoughts, and haven't had a negative destructive thought in a long time. There were times when I was at I would go to the lake and just relax, and this was before my kids were born. My daughter was born, and I would go sit there and just chill, and I had such dark thoughts. I wrote it in a journal to help me kind of work my way through it, get the words out. And like I said, for me, that journaling was the way to go, because I was able to write out the feelings and maybe not understand them, but get them out. Write the high points of my life, the low points of my life. I always ended with a high point and said, hey, this good happened. I noticed that since I've had my son, I'm more positive than negative, and I have forced myself to look for the positive in everything. There was quite a while where I would sit there and say, okay, so I'm in bed, I'm meditating, trying to chill. Life is rough, but let's find one good thing about the day. And every night was an affirmation to find one good thing about the day and not dwell on the bad. And that's what my meditation was about, was the one positive thing that I found throughout the day. And then I started noticing more than one, and it was two and three and more and more and more, until People who know me personally now know that I'm an extremely positive person. I'm very sarcastic, but I'm also a positive person. And it's looking for the silver lining, and it sounds very hokey, I know, and I'm sorry, but it's true. Looking for that silver lining has helped me push through and be a stronger person, and help me look for positivity and live in positivity as opposed to the negativity. We live in a world that's totally negative. I've talked about that at the beginning. Our world is a very negative, very hateful, very cruel world. And finding positive things is not always easy. I mean, it is if you're looking for them, because I have very little problems finding it now. But when you're in the darkest point of your life, or what you think is your darkest point, it is very hard to find the positivity and find one positive point in your life. If you're suffering from depression right now, and or have had it in bouts come and go with you, my suggestion is, and I know if you have it, you know when you're slipping in. It's not something that just all of a sudden goes, oh, hey, here we are, I'm depressed. No, you know when you're slipping in. I had a man that I was dating, and he and I started communicating online after we broke up, and he moved to another location, but he found me online several years later and wanted to strike up a relationship again. And I wasn't feeling it, but he was talking to me, and I could feel his depression slipping, or him slipping into a depression that he was pulling me into, and there was nowhere I wanted to stay in that, because I had 2 kids that I needed to take care of. And as much as I wanted to be there to help him through what he was dealing with, I also realized that I had to be healthy for myself and for my kids. So I stopped communicating with him because of the fact that there was no way. I wasn't going to start a relationship with him beyond friendship. He might have wanted more, but I wasn't going to go for it. But when it got to the point that he wanted, or it started slipping into this very depressed statements he was making, and really just pulling me into it as well, because I've been there, I've done that. I don't want to go back. And I've got 2 kids that at that time, my son was 7 years old, I think, and my daughter was, 12 or so, 12, 13. So I needed to be strong for the 2 of them. My daughter was going through her own thing with her father. She was having issues with him like I was having, and I was having problems with him as well. And my only bright sunlight there was my son, and his father wasn't part of the picture. So I had him to live for, and also my daughter. And if I felt this gentleman pulling me in, I knew I was going. So those of us who have been in depression and out of depression and in and again, we know when we're being pulled back in. And if you sense that, if you know that, that's when you need to start using coping skills and saying, okay, what is my positive? What is my positive? And every day looking for that one positive. Because if you can't find a positive, then you are beyond. You need to work hard to get yourself back out, because that's just, life is too scary. Death is too scary. And suicide, if you work at it, or if you want it, it is easy to happen, and it's not good. I've seen videos, or seen pictures, memes on Facebook that say suicide is a long-term, a long-term reaction to a short-term issue. And you're only hurting the people around you, seriously, when you kill yourself. And I'm not a professional in this field, but I have suffered depression my entire life. And I have a lot of people that come up to me and ask me for advice, and ask me to spend time talking to them, or just listening to them. And I have no problem doing that, because that's what I'm here for. I want to help you guys, and I want to be the voice of reason, maybe. for you, which is funny because most people who know me say, yeah, she can't be the voice of reason. But no, I want to be the person who is there for you and help you through this. And, you know, I've been depressed and I've been suicidal. Not to the point that some are, and I certainly have never succeeded. You know, I've always been able to talk myself back out and make sure that I was taken care of. But it took me a long time to identify the fact that I was depressed and that there was more to it than just me feeling glum and leading a crappy life. There was a heavy, heavy depression. And the point I'm at now, I'm happy with what I've got. I'm happy with my life. You know, the weight loss has done a lot to boost my mood, but I was positive even before I started this whole diet thing. And I believe in trying to find positivity in life. And it's not always easy, and it's not always going to be really visible. You have to sometimes listen to it, look for it. There were days when the only positivity I could find is that my son smiled at me, or my daughter smiled at me, and that was the only positivity I could find, or my daughter said, I love you. If that was the only positivity that I could find in my life, then that was what I latched onto, and I ran with it, because you got to grab onto what you can. Suicide rate is at now all-time high right now. People are taking the long-term out and don't realize that they are that the issue they're dealing with is only short-term, and there is help out there. I hate seeing something where people have committed suicide, and it kills me to think, you know, these lives have been lost. My daughter had friends who committed suicide in high school, and it kills me because these are kids that what they're dealing with is short term. It's high school. High school doesn't matter, although it does shape you and your psyche. The crap that goes on in high school is not going to be what you have in life. I see people from my high school now, like I said, and if I'm at work, we have such great conversations. I posted something on my Facebook page once that said, if you knew me in high school, what is the one thing you remember most about me? And an overwhelming result was your smile. And little did they know that that smile was pasted on because I didn't feel it, you know, and knowing that they kind of liked me in high school would have been enough to kind of pull me out of that. My biggest thing after leaving high school, one thing that I wanted was that I was known positively by everybody in my class, that everybody in my graduating class thought of me kindly. And I did my best to make sure that that happened. Now, there was one girl who, she was the school bully, and she was pretty rough on me. I remember one gym class, us walking out for archery, and she had strung her bow up and had an arrow knocked and pointed it right at me, and had said, I could kill you right now if I wanted to. And I was walking with the girl that cut my hair, Lisa, and she had just responded, if you do that, then I got to tell the teachers that you just killed her and you'll go to jail. The girl stopped. I didn't even react to it. The girl took her arrow off and unstrung the bow and ended up continuing out to the archery field, and that was the end of it. But even at that, she wrote in my yearbook, and I thought she was rougher on me than anybody else was. Let's put it that way. I don't know if she was rough with anyone else, but I know she wrote in my yearbook, she had said, you were the only person that ever stood up to me. Thank you. So I don't know if I made a difference in her life, and I look back in that yearbook now, and I smile. She's a friend on Facebook. Absolutely love her. She and I don't get to interact much, but I do. I love reading her posts, and I love being able to kind of give her a little advice or just listen to her. It's what we're here for. I say it's every time on my videos, I think, is that we're here for that. That's what we're here for. And, you know, I know that people, the way people are in high school is not how they are going to be in life. And you just gotta let them be stupid, because that's who we are. We're stupid kids at that time, and we are trying to figure out who we are, and we're never, it takes us years. I've heard something say that you don't really, your brain really is not mature until you're like 25 years old. So it's like we're immature until then, and we're nasty to each other, and you got to just let things roll. And it's the hard part, is letting it roll. At that point, I wasn't even really letting it roll. There was no positivity. I was plastering on a fake smile. I didn't realize what was going on with me, but I was plastering on that fake smile, and that was it. Did what I had to do to survive each and every day. And now I can happily say 36 years later, 35, 36 years later, 38 years later, never, don't count on, no, don't do that. 33 years later, life is good. I've made it through, well, you know, to quote Barry Manilow back from the 70s or 80s, I've made it through the rain. I have lived through a lot that I mean, people have had worse lives than I have. Seriously, I think that's what made me the most upset, was that I was getting mad about things that other people have had worse of. And I think that was where most of my depression came from, or at least most of my frustration came from, was the fact that, well, I've had a good life, so why am I pissed off? Why am I sad about this? Not giving myself the right to be depressed. And you do have a right for that, because you know what? It's who you are. But you have to find a way to pull yourself out of it. And like I said, when we have suffered from depression for years and have gotten ourselves out and gotten ourselves back in again, we know what we have to do to pull ourselves back out. Just find the positive in life and look for one a day, and positive will be easier to find. So now that I've got off my soapbox here, thank you for listening. Have a good day, guys. Comment in the bottom below if you need anything from me in this respect. Please let me know, because I want to help. I do. I know a lot of people that I talk to suffer from depression of some level or other, and I'm just here to help you guys, really seriously. Hopefully my story has awakened somebody. It took me years to realize. I was probably 20 years in before I realized that I had depression. So, you know, it's something to realize. Comment in the box below. Let me know how you're doing, what I can do to help you, if there's anything, how this struck you, if it did. Like the video, please. Let me keep going. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see. And also subscribe if you haven't yet, or get somebody else to subscribe, because I would love to have friends out there listening to me ramble on for hours. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good day.
I'm on the back.